rates and exposures with B virus. That stimulated some rumors that people thought, oh, somebody got a positive exposure, somebody got sick. Anyway, and there had been some recent incident that prompted this talk, and that's not the case. We haven't had anybody come up with a seropositive or have a positive exposure. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Is that we haven't had surgery exposures, but there's something about over time people can become complacent and just say, oh, B virus exposure, yeah, I've had that before. And just wanted to have a talk, just sort of refresh everybody about why we're concerned about it. And then two, what mechanisms do we have in place to reduce the occupational health risk of individuals here. And now we all play a part of that, whether you're back in animal care, whether you're in veterinary services, whether you're up in administration, how everybody has a responsibility for this. The title, I have to give credit to Jenny Short. I was trying to come up with something new rather than review of B virus. And she said, what about no do-overs? And I thought that was a good talk because it really is about the consequences of not following through. If you go and look up online, what is a do-over? It's do something over to do something again from the beginning, especially because you did it badly the first time. And I think there's ways that we can handle possible exposures that aren't the optimal ways. And that's what I want to review in my talk today. So there's three populations here at the primate center. There's new individuals who have not had a primate exposure. You've never, maybe worked with animals, but you've been safe and followed the rules and been lucky enough that you haven't had an accidental exposure. Then there's people who've had one or two exposures, you're still nervous about it, and you're taking all the precautions. And then there's people who can recite the occupational health speech when you go to occupational health service because you've heard it enough times. And if you're here, 10, 15, 30 years, it happens. It's happened to me. It's happened to a lot of people in this audience. And so just to do a little bit of a review as far as definitions for what we're talking about. A hazard is a source of risk such as a substance or action that may cause harm. And then the risk is the likelihood, probability, and the magnitude, severity of the occurrence of an adverse event. And so here we have a situation where, as we heard, because of the infrequency of B virus shedding, because the potential low risk of exposure, the probability of having a B virus exposure is very low. But the magnitude, severity of the event, as you'll see, of a potential B virus exposure is severe. And so that adds up to that we consider B virus exposure and potential consequences of that being one of the more significant risks that we have in our population. Risk assessment, prioritization of potential adverse health effects of human exposures to environmental hazards. So we're trying to do risk assessment about what are the risks if you have a needle stick, a scratch, a bite, any one of those usual routes. Now, as far as research work for fatalities, back in the 1990s, Ben Weigler, who did his PhD on B virus transmission here, and I worked together and we looked at fatalities associated with workers employed in health and diagnosis and treatment, such as hospital situations. And the average fatality rate was about 0.9 to 1.1 100,000 workers employed in a hospital setting. And if you look at the cases of B virus that have occurred and rough approximations for the amount of individuals employed and working with these animals, average rate of fatality for B virus among non-human workers is approximately 1 per 100,000 workers. So if you look at our list of adverse health events leading to a fatality, it's roughly that you would have over at SACMed Center Human Hospital setting, where you may have exposure to HIV, hepatitis C, or other potentially infectious agents. Now, if you look at a catalog of zoonotic diseases in non-human primates, certainly there's a wide assortment of viral, parasitic, bacterial, protozoal agents, and we're not going to go through all of these today. We're just going to talk about, some of the ones that are most significant in terms of potential for human fatality. Certainly, Ebola and rabies are two of those agents. They're so rare and so unusual in a research setting, at least here, we're not working at Sandberg or something like that, that it's not a primary concern. But certainly, B virus, whether we're dealing with conventional animals or we're dealing with SPF animals, is something that we're going to be concerned about if there's any human injury related. Now, B virus is normal in rhesus macaques. It's like their herpes simplex. Just as, many of us, well, if you have cold sore, you have herpes simplex infection. And so, great, other than having a cold sore, you may be totally asymptomatic. In rhesus macaques, it's exactly the same thing. Commonly an asymptomatic infection, they may have oral or genital vesicles or conjunctivitis. The mode of transmission is sexual play for young animals around 2 to 3 years of age. They'll start interaction with each other and transmit the virus. There's rarely attacks a disseminated disease. Usually the animal is immunosuppressed either by experimental design or by exposure to SRV or SIV. Animals will shed intermittently, and the best approximation is that by a maximum they'll shed once a day on a monthly basis. So 12 times a year they may shed in saliva or urine. It will be present in the CSF. Rarely is a virus found in the blood. In fact, it's almost never found in the blood. It's not a blood-borne virus. It's usually other bodily fluids. And shedding may be unassociated with clinical signs. When I was a resident first starting out, the conventional wisdom was, well, if they don't have oral vesicles, don't worry about it, they're not shedding B virus. Totally wrong. They can shed totally asymptomatically. Doesn't matter if you see anything or not. Now, B virus in man was first recognized, it certainly occurred before this, but was first recognized in 1933 in the case of Dr. William Grebner. And that's why it has B virus. You never want to be in the medical literature with any disease. That's not the way you want to be published. And Dr. Sabine, who was working on polio vaccines, investigated the isolated B virus, and he did further experiments, which I had just found this quote recently, and I want to go back and read this article, describing the infectivity of B virus by showing that infectivity was independent of the route of inoculation. And I think that's an important factor there. So, at least in the experiments he conducted, that the ability of the virus to infect was not really affected by route of delivery of the virus. Now, approximately 31 to 35 fatal cases that are described in the literature. There's been some cases that haven't necessarily gotten into the literature. There's roughly a 58% case fatality rate. And that's with the recognition that early treatment may respond to antiviral agents. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. So what are the routes of infection? What are the routes of potential exposure? Certain injuries, bites, scratches from animals, scratches on equipment, whether it be fresh saliva, fresh urine, fresh material, needle stick, lacerations, mucocutaneous exposure, and we recognize this after an exposure that occurred in the 1990s, so we'll be reviewing that in a minute. That's why we all wear face shields. It used to be you wore face shields if you were hosing a cage, if you were operating a lance of big abscess on a monkey, you might wear a face shield. Now we wear face shields all the time. Exposure to primary macaque monkey cell cultures and unknown, and that's unsettling, but they have had at least one B virus incident that occurred in an individual who had worked with monkeys, but hadn't worked with monkeys in 10 years and developed symptoms of B virus. So whether how that infection occurred, nobody really knows. As far as injury incidents and reporting, and we'll talk about this in terms of the chain of safety that we have for each other here. Animal-inflicted bites and scratches occur between 81 and 82 per 100,000 people. The highest risk for personnel employed less than 2 years, and this makes sense. If you go to a hospital, who are the people who get the needle sticks, the scalpel wounds the most? It's the residents. It's people who are new, they're not familiar, they're still developing their skills in performing these tasks, so they're the highest at risk. This is a study that was conducted by Dr. Nick Lerica and his student Zachariah back in 1996. The thing that was concerning was between 20 and 59% of the injuries were unreported. And that is a big concern. Our goal is to have 0 injuries unreported. If you have an injury, if you have a doubt, report that incident. We'll talk about this in a minute. Now, what is the chain of safety? And the chain of safety is staff training, appropriate use of personal protective equipment, engineering controls to try and limit or prevent or minimize exposure, accident reporting and appropriate first aid, whether that's washing a scratch or a wound, eye wash, and then follow up with excellent occupational health care. And we are fortunate here at the Davis-Hanna Dr. Belfort is a tremendous resource. And he attends national meetings on this topic. He's met with Julia Gilbert, he's met with people who are familiar with this agent. So he is a very valuable resource. And then follow up. Now, as far as personal protective equipment, and we may have questions about this afterwards, but we're talking about universal precautions. So the way I like to simplify it when I talk to vet schemes is don't let anything of theirs touch anything of yours. You don't want blood, saliva, urine, any sort of tissue fluid contacting your skin, contacting your eyes, your mouth. You want to keep those 2 things separate. Worry about mechanical injury, so you want to have sleeves on if you want to have bare arms. Obviously, injection. I always use this example. Years ago, I was out in the field pages, and I saw an employee who was wearing proper protective equipment. They had on their gloves, plastic gloves, and they had their work gloves on over their hands, and they're moving outside the cage equipment. And after they finished, they sat there and they pulled their work gloves off their teams, and then they peeled off their gloves with their hands. And I was just you know what you just did. And I use the term fecal oral transmission. That's what it is when you put something close to your mouth. Mucous membrane exposure, we'll talk about this, and certainly respiratory exposure. That's why in certain situations, and Dave Bennett is familiar with this, we require people to wear N95 masks to be fit tested. So, if you have an exposure, despite best-laid plans of monkeys and men, training to go and report emergency care and first aid, informed medical care, patient follow-up. This needs to be available 24/7. Whether it's going over his occupational health during business hours, whether it's reporting to therapeutics, if it happens after hours, finding a veterinarian, calling your supervisor. If you've been exposed, you start calling people on the list so you get somebody who says, okay, this is what we're going to do. Chase it like it means something. Post-exposure risk assessment. How would the exposure occur? Is there any way we can minimize this risk? Is there any way we can minimize this risk? Now we're going to go through 2 cases. Just to give you an example of different situations, very different situations. Unfortunately, they both have the same outcome. Now, you've heard about Elizabeth R. Griffin, and this is a paragraph taken from the Elizabeth R. Griffin Foundation webpage. There's been a foundation specifically started up to try and do education and help with prevention of E-virus cases. She was a student employee working at Emory Primate Center. And she was working with other staff members. She had on her gloves and everything. They were loading up transfer boxes with monkeys in them into a truck. And in the process of loading the transfer box into the truck, something splashed out of the transfer box into her eye. And she had a coworker there, somebody who had training, just like she had. She said, "Do I need to worry about it? Is that a concern?" And the comment was that, no, B virus isn't transmitted that way. It's not a risk. Now this, mind you, this exposure occurred at one of the National Primate Centers at Emory University, right across the street from CDC. So her exposure occurred there, and after about 30 minutes, her eye was bothering her, didn't feel okay. And so she went and washed it out with some water. So she had ocular exposure from fluid in the transfer cage, told by a coworker that it wasn't a risk. And it continued to bother her, and over the course of 2 weeks, she developed a headache and an eye infection. So she went to an ophthalmologist, go to an ophthalmologist, eye infection. Ophthalmologist said, "Well, I need a referral from a general practitioner." So she goes and she gets a referral from her general practitioner. The general practitioner said, "Yeah, it's an eye infection. You can go back and see the ophthalmologist." Went back and saw the ophthalmologist. They thought she had a chlamydial infection. She gave her some topical ointments to put in her eye. It didn't improve. At this point, that started to get concerned, and so she had called up an infectious disease specialist in Emory Hospital, related the symptoms, and said, "Now you don't have to worry, B virus isn't transmitted. You know, you probably just have a ocular exposure." And it's continued to bother her. She called the infectious disease specialist again, and all of a sudden, alarm bells started to go off. Said, maybe this is something new. So she was admitted to Emory Hospital. She was treated with acyclovir IV for 10 days. She had some improvement. They did spinal taps. She had B virus, she was antibody positive. The virus had entered her eye, traveled a very short distance up her optic nerve to her cortex. So she was treated IV, then she was released with to her mother, who was a nurse. And her mother took her home, started treating her at home, and a day later, and her mother gave this talk at the last year's APD, talked about the last days of the doctor, and you could hear a pin drop in that room. And she said that she was there, and her daughter says, "I can't move my legs to get up and go to the bathroom." So she got her daughter up, went, and realized they had to go back to the hospital. And she developed an ascending encephalomyelitis, went into a coma, and died 6 weeks later after exposure from respiratory infections. So here's somebody who had gone through the training program at Emory. This was incredibly traumatic, as you might imagine, for the staff at Emory. It was tremendous. She had asked multiple people, both the coworkers and specialists and physicians, about risk. She said, "Is this possibly B virus? Is this possibly?" And never gotten blown and get in the hospital and let's test you for it. Let's test for it. Let's find out. And so here's something where somebody tried to reach out, and the safety chain wasn't there. The safety chain didn't support her. Now, the next case, I didn't know Elizabeth Griffin. I knew Bill Pollock, and he was a non-human primate veterinarian at a large commercial facility. Young guy, wife, 2 kids, responsible for a large non-human primate colony. And I was at an APD meeting where we were expecting Bill to show up with his coworkers, and they said, "Oh, no, Bill's got the flu. You know, he's not here." And so we went through the APD meeting, and about halfway through the meeting, all of his coworkers got on a flight and went home. Bill didn't have the flu. He developed a persistent fever, aching, nausea, flu-like symptoms for 5 days. He started developing neurologic signs after 5 days, and he saw his private physician. He was diagnosed with Rocky Mountain spotted fever. 2 days after neurologic onset, he lapsed into a coma. He died on day 15 in a helicopter during transport to another medical facility because all of a sudden they realized this was a B virus case. There was no injury report for Bill Powell. There was no record of having an exposure. Post-mortem, they found a small abrasion on his fingertip, and they tested it, and that site was positive for B virus. He was in charge of the B virus prevention program. He was the one who gave the talk to employees. He thought it wasn't a problem. Whether Bill, I don't know, maybe Bill didn't recognize he got an abrasion, maybe he had the abrasion afterwards, and he contacted the monkey somehow and got it infected that way. But here's somebody who should have known, who should have had the lowest threshold for reporting something, but it didn't work out that way. So what does B virus do? What does B virus look like? These are herpetic lesions associated with herpes viruses, and specifically herpes B, but you do form these types of lesions in areas around the bite. Now, we're going to talk about viral migration, and we're using herpes simplex as a surrogate because there's better illustrations for herpes simplex. But if there's an infection, whether it's in this case for herpes simplex in the oral region around the nose, but if you imagine B virus, it could be fingertip, it could be foot, it could be anywhere on the body, what happens is it goes through the tissue and then it gets in the nervous pathways. And then it just begins to slow climb up to the brain. And so here we go through ophthalmic branch like it did with Beth, mandibular branch, or any other routes to get up into the brain tissue. And that's where it undergoes a living phase. And the whole point of putting people on acyclovir after an exposure is to try and prevent the virus from getting into that nervous system tissue. Now, what are the long-term effects of viral encephalitis? As it migrates up the brain and starts inflaming the meninges and starts causing what they term liquefactive necrosis. And that's a very apt term. Here you see in herpes simplex encephalitis case, CT scan showing destruction of parietal and subfrontal lobes, and then here's what it looks like on autopsy. And if you do a cross section of what it looks like in the brain, in another case, here you can see the temporal lobe just totally destroyed by the viral encephalitis for liquefactive necrosis. So where does that leave us? We have a chain of safety here to try and protect ourselves and try and protect each other. It involves staff training, appropriate use of personal protective equipment, having engineering controls, accident reporting and first aid, excellent occupational health care, and then follow-up on people in cases. So the question I leave you with, what are you in that chain? Are you the strongest link or are you the weakest link? And by the strongest link, I mean, do we take each exposure seriously, report it, and follow up with occupational medicine? If we see a colleague who, after a procedure, something happens, they shake their head like this, they say, did you just get splashed in the eye with something? You need to go to occupational health. Does that need to be reported? If you see somebody outside who grabs a monkey and then sit there, did you just get bit? Did you just get scratched? It's not hassling them. It's not snitching. It's looking out for your life. So we all depend on each other, and we all depend on communication. And so if you have any questions about this book, talk to your supervisor, talk to Greg, talk to any one of the vet staff. I'd be happy to talk to Board of Occupational Health. We can control this. B virus is scary, but I can tell you, everyone in this room is going to undergo a bigger risk exposure when you get in your car this afternoon and drive home. That's really risky. We can control the hazards associated with B virus exposure. But we have to treat it seriously, and we have to become changes. So that's the talk. I'm happy to take any questions. If anybody has any comments, you can do so now. If you want to do it later on one-on-one, that's fine as well. Good.
Is there anything available for people to take with them if they need to go to like center emergency room? Because I've heard several times when people go over there with exposures, they try to say, "Oh, you need hepatitis C or TB," and they don't even know about it.
No, you're absolutely right, and that is something that is a problem for every primary facility that deals with after hours, and you'll go over, we've taken over, we've gone over, we've given them handouts and said, put this in your emergency book, and it's fine for maybe the next 2 shifts, and then they get somebody else new who's coming in. But if that is still occurring, I think, we should sit down and talk with Greg. Actually, it'd be a really good topic for the infection control committee to sit down and talk about if we have something that can be taken over as a handout and say, this is what we're concerned about, this is what we're dealing with. So anyway, but that's a really good point. I mean, I've encountered that, yeah, it's B virus, you have hepatitis, no, you don't worry about hepatitis, we'll give you a shot for hepatitis. No. And we've even had that over at Sac Medicine. So it's a constant problem because physicians are they want to listen to you, but if you try and diagnose yourself, tell you what you think you have, something just sort of switches off. So you need something to back that up. Okay.
Excellent point, Jeff. I just want to share one of my experience with exposure to the monkey. So when I started here, I was doing surgery during my residency. So you double gloves. The first glove is regular gloves, and on the top you have this latex glove. And I thought that they poked my gloves with the needle. And then I took it out and I do the test. So basically, you get the gloves and put water in it to see that if there is water coming out of it, that means that the water is. I was very lucky that Bruce was there. Bruce Odella. Bruce. Yes. So, and he said, well, let me try it. So he got the gloves out and just put the water in it and just push it. And there was one little drop, like traditionally, maybe just a little drop came out of that part of the gloves. So I think the watch body is very important. It's extremely important. So if try to just advocate for safety of others. If you work with someone, just keep an eye. That was my experience.
I agree. To a big extent, we're relying on each other. We're relying on each other for concern. We're sort of sitting there. I know how it is. You're sitting there. You've got 20 things to do, and it happens in the middle of the day. And last few months, that 2-hour round trip, going over to occupational health. I mean, it is. But anytime I have that, I think about, okay, what if this is the time? What if this is the exposure? What if this is my 1 in 100,000?
This is probably a safe question, but the case of Joe Pollock.
Yeah.
So he had an abrasion that they found 15 days after what?
He died 15 days after his exposure, and they did an necropsy, and they were looking.
What was his exposure on day 0? What?
They don't know.
So how?
So in other words, what they did is they took samples. They found this abrasion. They were looking for cuts, scratches, anything. they found this abrasion, they took a sample and they did PCR on that tissue, and that's where they found the signal.
Right, so I imagine 15 days ago, if the abrasion occurred, then it would have been a bigger wound, right? Probably, or, I don't know, it's just a weird thing, and you don't have an abrasion for 15 days. And then I'm just thinking, how did they figure out it was 15 days after based on what?
I think, I don't know the exact condition of the abrasion, whether it was scab
Yeah.
or, you know, I don't know those details. The main thing is that they found some damage to the tissue that was associated with positive marks.
That's disconcerting, that's all. I always have little things like,
No, that's, so we worry about animal exposure, but we worry about if you have, the only documented human transmission of virus, and you probably already heard about this, was people down in Florida where there were 3 animal caretakers and they were hand grabbing monkeys, and 3 guys had the misfortune to all be bit by the same monkey on the same day. And they all developed the virus, and I think 2 died. One of them got on a cycle they were have to take for the rest of their life, and survived. One of the guys who died, he developed a rash around his bite, a herpetic lesion. And so his wife was helping him out, and she had hydrocortisone ointment, immunosuppressive ointment, and she went to his finger and rubbed her finger on the rash with the hydrocortisone ointment, and then she had a rash on her hand, and she rubbed the same ointment on her hand, and she inoculated herself with the virus. But she had never been around monkeys, never had exposure, and there's been enough D virus cases. In fact, there was one early on here in the 1960s that guy who survived without any antiviral treatment, just survived through it. He had permanent neurological support. He had limp and kidney damage and some, neural signs. But they have looked longitudinally at family members, and nobody has ever transmitted the virus to a family member other than by following operation. Yeah, she survived. Yeah, she's on a cycle with it. Yeah, she died in those started showing the same signs. Any other questions? There was, I think.
Well, actually, 2 questions. But one, if you were exposed, when did signs first appear? When did you start to see signs? So if you had an exposure and then you start coming down with some kind of illness, about how long would that be?
Let's see. So the question is what is the incubation period if you're not related? There isn't a huge data set to put that material together from, and as I said, there are some cases where it appears to be years from the last primate exposure. Certainly, I would say the general rule of thumb is that they're looking at like 7 to 10 days that they would expect. And certainly in terms of serological response, we go where they take a blood sample and then you go back in 21 days to look at a convalescent sample, what they're looking at seroconversion, even if you're asymptomatic, if the virus wasn't inoculated to you. So there isn't excuse me. There are a large number of cases, and there was not a consistent publication record of all the facts from cases. So we try and piece together and extrapolate from other viral infections, but you're probably looking at something like 7 to 10, maximum by 2 weeks. But like it's chickenpox. Chickenpox, you get chickenpox, it sits in your body for 40, 30 years, and then it comes back later on with shingles. And nobody knows, is there a possibility B virus can do the same? You really don't know. If there's no, well,
We've sort of done this, but I think it's important to make clear exposure versus infection. And the follow-up is definitely going on occupational health. But can you elaborate just a little bit what kind of happens under those?
so if you go, Dr. Belcourt has talked with his colleagues in the field, and what he feels is critical is to get the acute blood sample to determine later on if you have had seroconversion. But what he likes to do is get somebody on full acyclovir within 2 hours. And the rationale is to try and prevent it getting into your nervous tissue. And I wish I could say I had off the top of my head, the figures on this to document that, I mean, there's people who've been exposed where they know the monkey was positive, the monkey might have been shedding, people didn't get it, whether it's just luck, accident, whether it was acyclovir or whatever. But the idea is to try and get the virus, to stop the virus from migrating into your nervous system tissue. That's why it happens after hours here. We have people on site where Dr. Belcourt has authorized them to provide oral acyclovir treatment until you go over to occupational medicine or go over to South Davis. And then you give a report, and then, say if you have any concern, any, stiff neck, if you develop fever, if you develop cold-like symptoms, if you develop tingling, in your extremities, call occupational health, follow up, and then at 21 days, you go for the convalescent sample, you get another serum sample, that's sent out to the National B Virus Lab, they look at it, and they make sure that first sample's negative for the second sample.
Actually, GRADE is a great resource for
Oh, yeah,
some of the
yeah.
information, but here's the other situation. We send tissue samples out to other investigators, and we usually have an insert with herpes B warnings, and that really needs to be stressed. And I'm bringing both these issues out because of the recent situation.
Yeah, no, yeah, you definitely, that warning, whether it's whatever animal it's collected from, if it's a cat, you send out the B virus precautions.
Well, they're probably sending out potentially B virus, so maybe that's what we think about it. So there you go.
Right, right.
Send out the precautions and all that.
Isn't that conclusive, the serum sampling that you're doing, is that like conclusively, no, you don't have it? You did not-
So, is Joanne in here? Serology is never 100%. Serology is, it's like, there's never any medical test that's 100%. I could go and get a cardiac exam from my doc today and say, you're in perfect cardiac health tomorrow. So, to the best of available technology, it is the best diagnostic test we can make this status. But it's always hard.
No. Nurse sometimes they cross. And the guys are really great about copying good tests. The book about that.
It's potential contamination and exposure. And if you see material that's grossly contaminated, I ask somebody, go make a copy.
Yeah, but it's good, I mean, not, if you even live in your house, like work, that is also, that also. Touching that tissue, that paper. Again, yeah.
How many people go out and they'll write an animal record, they'll use their keys, go in and out of areas, all that, and then they go out to their car and they got one full of stuff and they put their keys in their mouth. I mean, I sprayed out my keys with, disinfectant pens. Pens are great. I don't know who was here, if we were when we That's before they developed an accurate serological test for Ebola. But we had a bowling quarantine. And so we had a big, actually this was during the measles outbreak. So what we did is we had a sign-in sheet in the back, and we put fluorescent powder on the pencils, and so the people would sign in. And then after the talk, we had to come up and we had a fluorescent light and shined it on them to see where they had touched after they had used that contaminated pencil. And it was amazing. Shoes, men, beards just lit up like crazy. Because we loved auto group. After we used the pencil, and there were a few people that didn't know where they had scratched. So it was, but it really had a take-home message of how easily we can attend. But so you're absolutely right. Records that we bring in, things, you have to consider the potential that you have.
That's actually a really good point. So, by CDC recommendation, actually, I brought up this that it's enterovirus, so we can actually see hours after after studying the body of the monkey. So, and especially it lasts a little bit longer in the moose environment. So that's another consideration. It's not just splash in from monkey. Even the urine that is left at the bottom of the cage, and then you come back and you're going to flush it out, and then just by hours, even monkeys, you took that monkey to another room. So that's another.
Now, Peter Berry and one of his post or graduate students did a study several years ago with CNB looking at survivability on environmental services, and it drops dramatically, but it doesn't go away for quite a while. So it decreases, but it doesn't eliminate it. Are there any other questions? Two things I just want to, somebody asked at the last session, how many times can I go over to occupational health before I get fired? And, referencing, how many times before, shows up right and I recounted the story. We had a resident years ago who went to occupational health 5 times in a week. I wanted to buy that person butcher gloves to work around monkeys, but they weren't fired. You go over as many times as you are concerned. There is no limit on it. What we will watch and what we will be concerned about is that people aren't using proper safety precautions. If you're going into a situation and your face shield is up on top of your head, and your mask is acting as a support for the beard, if you aren't using your personal protective equipment, that is something your supervisor will evaluate. But if anybody has an exposure, report it. There's no barrier to report it. Well, if there's no more questions, thank you for taking the time to come out this afternoon.